Hi class, this is lesson 4.2 and that's apply congruence in triangles. The big question is, what are congruent figures? So congruence, a term that we've heard before, talking about angles or line segments. Now we're going to talk about congruent figures. So in two congruent figures, all the parts of one figure are congruent to the corresponding parts of the other figures. Corresponding parts is a pair of sides or angles that have the same relative position in two congruent or similar figures. So example 1 is identify congruent parts. So we're going to write a congruent statement for the triangles. That's something you'll see often and have to do often. We want to identify all pairs of congruent corresponding parts. So my corresponding angles would be angles J and T, because they both have 3. So I could say angle J is congruent to angle T. Also angle K and S. So angle K is congruent to angle S. And then our other is angle L and angle R. So we'd say angle L is congruent to angle R. For corresponding sides, we have JK, segment JK, which is congruent to, so it's from the 3 markings to the 1 markings. So from my 3 markings to my 1 markings would be T and then S. So segment JK is congruent to segment TS. And we want to make sure we keep our points in the right order. So see how J and T are corresponding angles. J and T should be in the same spot here. Another would be KL and RS. So we want to make sure we have them in the right order. I'm going to say segment KL is congruent to segment. K has 1 marking and S has 1 marking, so we're going to put SR. And then we would also say the third one, segment JL, is congruent to segment. Now J has 3 markings, so that's segment T, and L has 2 markings, that's segment R. So our congruence statement, we want to make sure our letters are in the right order, so I can say triangle JKL is congruent to triangle, and we know J corresponds with T, so I want T here, and K corresponds with S, so I want S here, and L corresponds with R, so I want R here. Why don't you pause it and try filling this one in on your own. Okay, welcome back. You should have found that angle A is congruent to angle F, and that angle B is congruent to angle G, angle C is congruent to angle H, segment AB is congruent to segment FG, segment BC is congruent to segment GH, and segment CA is congruent to segment HF. And then we need to write a triangle congruence statement. So we'd say triangle ABC is congruent to triangle FGH. And we have to make sure again that A goes with F, B goes with G, and C goes with H, because those are our corresponding angles. Example 2, use properties of congruent figures. So in the diagram, QRST is congruent to WXYZ. So we know Q is congruent to W, R is congruent to X, S is congruent to Y, and T is congruent to Z. So we have to make sure we have these statements written right. So find X. So my X is right here. We also have another one, X right there. Well, we know angle W is congruent to angle Q because that was given to us. So we can say 65 equals 5x plus 5. Solving for x here, be minus 5 from both sides. So I have 5x equals 60. Then divide them both by 5. And x equals 12. So I found my x. Now we want to find y. Now I know this side is y minus x is 12. And I know this segment, XW, is congruent to this segment over here, RQ. Because again, R and X are in the same spot, and Q and W are in the same spot. Since those two are congruent, and this is 6 inches, I can say 6 equals y minus 12. And if I add 12 to both sides, you find that y equals 18. Okay, pause the video and try this example on your own. All right, welcome back. It says find the value of x, then find the measure of angle G. Well, we know we're going to say here that angle G and angle T are congruent. So we can say 108 equals, sorry, 103, not 108, 103 equals 2x minus 7. Here's my middle. I'll add 7 to both sides. So I have 110 equals 2x, divided both by 2, and x equals 55. Okay, let's look at our next one. The reflexive property of congruent triangles. So for any triangle ABC, we know that triangle ABC is congruent to triangle ABC. This one's kind of common sense here. Any triangle is congruent to itself. For any side xy, the distance xy is congruent to the distance xy. For any angle LMN is congruent to angle LMN. So any angle or side or triangle is congruent to itself, and that one's kind of common sense. The thing to know here is that's called the reflexive property, and we will use that name when we start doing proofs. So example 3, show that the figures are congruent. So to show the figures are congruent, we need to show that we have corresponding parts. So on this map, if you cut the map in half along PR, will the sections of the map be the same size and shape? And then explain. So if we cut this in half, well, let's look. We know that these two sides are the same. We know that this is 90, and this one is 90. Okay, my pen's a little off here. So we know angle S is congruent to angle R. Let's see what else that we can figure out. Well, if I cut this, isn't this like two parallel lines? Oh, these two are the same as well. Hey, don't we know that these, don't they share that piece right there? Since it shares that, we know that they've got a third side, so all three of their sides are the same. So I know that segment PS is congruent to segment RQ. And I also know that segment SR is congruent to segment QP. I also know that segment PR is congruent to itself, our segment RP. And that's where our reflexive property comes in right there. We know that all three sides are the same. As we move on, you learn if we can prove that all three sides are the same, we know that the triangles are indeed congruent. So pause the video and try this on your own. Okay, welcome back. It says in the diagram at the right, E is the midpoint of BD and AC. So if it's the midpoint, if this is the midpoint, we know that this and this are the same. And these two are also the same. Okay, so we've got all three sides the same. Well, these two are vertical angles, so don't we know that those two angles are the same? Because they're vertical angles. And if you think about it, this and this, we've got the little triangle showing they're parallel. So if I look at this line as a transversal, then this angle is congruent to this angle because they're alternate interior angles. And if I look at this line right here as my transversal, these two angles are also congruent because they're alternate interior angles. And that is the end of our notes for this lesson. Remember, if you had any questions, make sure you put a star next to them, and we will talk about them tomorrow in class. Have a good night.